Outer Wilds is one of my favourite games of all time, and I'd say some of the best curiosity-driven exploration in any game I've ever played. It perfectly encapsulates a sense of discovery and drive to explore that has been natural to humans throughout history, especially our real-life space travel. And that is intentional by the developers. Quote, "The primary objective of Outer Wilds is to capture this spirit of real-world space exploration in an interactive experience." End quote. So how does Outer Wilds create this sense of discovery, and how does it encourage you to explore its vast solar system? Well, with this video, let's find out. Just a heads up, when I started writing this video, it was mainly based on the paper Outer Wilds, a game of curiosity-driven space exploration, which was written by the co-creative lead at Mobius Digital and the creative director of Outer Wilds, Alex Beecham, during an early build of the game. And the plan was to adapt parts of that to video format with some extra insights into the design from my perspective. But during the writing process, I found there's quite a few video talks by Alex Beecham and Kesley Beecham into the design of the game, which, is useful for this video, but at the same time I don't want to just repeat the stuff that they say in my own words, because I'd feel a bit too much like I'm just, making their video again. And there is also quite a lot of other videos on the design of Outer Wilds, so I did consider scrapping this, but, I just kind of want to talk about this game that I love so much, and I think I can add an interesting spin on the design of the game. I did write my dissertation at university on curiosity and exploration, so hopefully I can give some of my own insight. I'll try not to just repeat what they say, and I would recommend definitely watching those videos and reading that design paper because it is very interesting. Anyway, of course, spoilers for the entire game. Outer Wilds is a game that's best experienced with no prior knowledge, so go play it if you haven't already. This video is more made for those that have played and loved Outer Wilds and want some more insight into it, or for those that are interested in creating curiosity-based exploration through design. But if you are just interested in the video and don't care about spoilers, I'm not going to stop you. So, let's get on with the video. As I said before, Outer Wilds is a game that was designed to evoke the exploration and discovery of real-world space travel. But people explore for a variety of different reasons, either in real life or in video games. With this game, they really wanted to reward a specific type of exploration driven by curiosity. This can be defined as when someone chooses to explore a new environment with, quote, "the primary objective to expand their knowledge or understanding of it," end quote. Curiosity can be defined as a need to acquire new knowledge, but Lowenstein defines it as a perception of a gap in knowledge or understanding, where someone is basically most curious when they have an initial base of information, but they have a desire to learn more about it. This makes them more curious than if they didn't know anything about a subject because they had no desire to know more about it, or they already have enough knowledge about that subject. You need sort of the middle ground for them to be the most curious. Outer Wilds is a master at doing this sort of structure of curiosity that Lowenstein defined, mainly through its narrative, with NPCs or translated text stories about distant planets. Beecham describes the structure as a web of curiosities, where each important location or piece of information that is found is linked to specific objects he calls curiosities. Enough information is given so that the player are aware of these curiosities, but the path to them is not instantly obvious or accessible. This allows players to investigate more of their own volition and eventually get enough information that they can access this curiosity. These answer major narrative questions or inform players of information about how the in-game universe works, further fueling their curiosity and allowing them to progress further, without outright telling the player what to do, getting them to piece it together themselves. The way the web of information is structured also allows multiple points of entry for the player, that no matter where they decide to explore, there will be something that piques their interest about one of the major POIs. These hints and clues are structured so that they are found on separate planets to each other, as well as they hint to the other clues. This encourages players to explore the different planets and cross-reference the information that is gathered, and also to come back to a previous planet they've already maybe fully explored with newfound information about how they can progress. For the more important POIs, this information will be mentioned by multiple different sources to ensure the player is aware of them. This all ensures the player won't miss anything crucial for progressing. The way this web of curiosities is structured should sound familiar, as it is visually displayed in the ship logbook. This allows the information in the game to be easily tracked without the player having to remember every little piece of information. This also helps with what to explore next, as you can see which information links to what and where, or if there's still information left to discover in a specific area. This whole structure relies on the main driving force of progressing the game to be purely knowledge-based. There are no power-ups in Outer Wilds or door keys to be found. Players progress by learning how the universe works and applying that knowledge to reach new areas. The 22-minute time loop of the game also helps cultivate curiosity. Each planet is designed with some sort of change as the 22 minutes progress. Brittle Hollow slowly falling into the black hole beneath, the Hourglass Twins trading streams of sand, or the tornadoes on Giant Steep, picking up and launching the islands into the sky. These changes were designed to, quote, "create a world the player can come to understand but ultimately unable to control," end quote, and forces players to think not only where they want to explore, but when in the loop they should explore. These huge changes in the world create a sense of awe in the player when they see them, and create a desire to want to experiment, jump into that black hole, jump into that sand stream. This doesn't always lead to something, but it creates experimentation and critical thinking. What's this planet going to be like in 10 minutes time? What was it like 10 minutes ago that I can see in my next loop? How will this affect my traversal? What new information can I find if I do this? Players learning to use critical thinking about how and when they should explore also helps with some of the more out-of-the-box puzzles later on in the game. For example, I'm going to spoil a puzzle solution here, so if you don't want to know, then don't watch this bit. Accessing the top of the Tower of Quantum Knowledge by awaiting it to fall through the black hole so you can actually get to the top of it, or realise you have to get to Ember Twin right away to be able to reach the high energy lab because of the falling sand. As Beecham puts it in his full indie talk, quote, "Subtlety is for cowards. If you make something weird enough, people are going to be curious about it," end quote. Stuff like the natural changes on each of the planet are weird and interesting, but also things like the quantum moon disappearing as you fly through it, the probe launch exploding over your head every time you wake up, or just the entirety of Dark Bramble being whatever in the... oh my god, get me out of here, what the... ah! These are all things that stick out in the players' heads as something different or weird. I'm sure that many players decide to land on the interloper, not because of the hints towards it, either through the recalling of the shuttle or the Nomai mentioning it multiple times, but because just wouldn't it be cool to land on a comet as it's flying through space. Teaching players to be curious is also vital to ensure they are willing to explore. You can do this via various learning theories. Behaviorism suggests using conditioning by giving players positive reinforcement when they decide to do something. This reinforces the action as expect the reward if they do said action. Outer Wilds kinda does this by giving players the reward of new information when they explore, but if the player isn't already engaged and curious about the world/narrative, then this doesn't really do anything. And the devs have also stated that they didn't really want to do actual rewards when you explore. They wanted your reason to explore to be fully because of curiosity. To actually get players to be curious about the world around them then, Mobius Digital uses the Montessori method in the tutorial area Timber Hearth. The Montessori method of teaching emphasizes hands-on learning in classrooms and schools. Essentially, it lets children self-direct their learning, choosing which activities they want to do next. With this, they learn through discovery and exploration and experimentation. This method is used in the starting area of Outer Wilds. Players are given a single goal: get the launch codes. But whilst they do this, they are free to explore the village, talking to NPCs and playing around with the various mini-games that teach the essential mechanics. Beecham explains that these are all designed to instill curiosity in the player, teach them about spacecraft and the systems that govern the world. This allows players to first understand the space they're in before they can get curious about any wider narrative or different planets. NPCs are also enthusiastic about space travel, wishing the player good luck or giving players hints towards the web of curiosities, giving something for the player to explore towards when they do eventually set off. One example of this is one of the NPCs telling the player all about the different instruments all the other members of the space exploration team play. This encourages players to look into the sky, all the different planets, and try and listen for the different instruments, and relate them back to what you've just been told. The NPC also mentions how one of the space exploration team has gone missing, Feldspar, who plays the harmonica. Eared players?
Ears of a hawk. Jesus Christ!
We'll notice that one of the planets has sounds of a harmonica coming from it. Some may even notice that the same sound is coming from Timber Hearth, setting up a plot hook for players to explore. There are various other examples of NPCs mentioning other planets or things of interest for the players to get curious about. But I also think the museum sets up players' curiosity quite well, and Alex Beecham seems to agree, as he explained that this was a thing they added quite late on into development that seemed to really help with getting players to be curious about the world around them. Each little exhibition links back to one of the other planets, or narrative plot threads, such as the gravity crystal from Brittle Hollow, the anglerfish from Dark Bramble, or the quantum shard hinting towards the quantum moon. They're all introduced in a safe environment to allow players to experiment without fear. The cherry on top for me personally is when you get to the top of the observatory and open the solar system map. This puts into perspective how big this universe actually is, with a sense of awe and wonder, and allows players to identify each different planet and link it back to what they have just learned. Right after this, the player gets the only mandatory conversation in the game with Hornfels to get the launch codes, and as they do this, they are asked what they want to do after they set off into space, with various options ranging from, I'm going to learn more about the Nomai, I'll meet up with the other travellers, or I'm gonna wing it. This tells the player there is no right or wrong way to explore in this game. There isn't something specific they should be curious about, they should just explore what genuinely does interest them, and what they are genuinely curious about. This whole tutorial section, quote, allows players to ask their own questions about the world, and increases the chance that those questions have answers. When players start to explore the solar system, they should feel encouraged to explore, not because they will receive some sort of tangible reward, but because they will receive the reward of knowledge. Even if unintentionally, as the Montessori method is never actually mentioned by Alex Beecham, that I can see. I think Mobius has made an ideal Montessori classroom on Timber Hearth. Throughout the rest of the game, there are various other ways Mobius Digital gets you curious about structures. Obviously, large structures in the distance are an easy way, When flying to a new planet, there are always 3 to 4 large structures which instantly catch the player's eye. These act as starting points for their exploration, but can also act as focal points, allowing players to orientate themselves. You'll also notice when you fly to a planet that the information is normally located on these big structures and never between them. Between these big structures is normally quite barren. This ensures that players know exactly where they need to explore and doesn't mean they have to comb the whole environment for information. Lots of these large locations give instant information as soon as you enter, but a few are inaccessible, such as the Southern Observatory on Brittle Hollow or the High Energy Lab on the Ember Twin. These are locations that are hinted towards through various pieces of dialogue and contain crucial information about how the world works or the narrative, but both have doors that are locked from the outside, forcing players to find another way in. For a lot of the locations that are locked as well, you are prompted to shoot a scout launcher inside. This allows you to see all the stuff that you could possibly be learning when you actually get inside from a closer angle. This increases curiosity as, again, you get a baseline information of what you can find, but it is withheld from you using the Lowenstein sort of idea of creating curiosity. The surroundings for these areas give players enough information to know where to start looking. For these two examples, happens to be below the surface. As the player traverses underground, they will find other things that catch their attention, and as they explore along the path, another one opens up, until this one plot hook has branched out into a number of different areas the players can explore, and lots of information they can find. When players get inside these large structures, the answers they will obtain will be very important, but they're not the end of the trail. The information you normally get from these structures just leads to more questions, which is good because then you have more places to explore. For example, when you actually get to the Southern Observatory at the bottom of Brittle Hollow, the information you learn is how the tornadoes work on Giant's Deep, allowing you to get past the harsh current on Giant's Deep and down to the centre. But even when you get there, you still don't know how to get past the layer of electricity and actually get to the important information. You have to then go somewhere else, spoilers, Dark Bramble, and find Feldspar to even get the information on how to get to the centre of Giant's Deep. As you can see, this line of exploration constantly leads to other pieces of exploration and branches off until this one line initial hook has led to multiple different things that you can learn. An important thing to add is that Outer Wilds makes it super easy to find information, as the way the Nomai language is presented through a glowing blue spiral, it makes it stand out on any wall of any location in the game. And as they've already seen some of this text in the museum or in very obvious places in the starting areas, players will know what they're looking for and it will easily catch their eye. For the information that isn't housed in these large structures though, that is more hidden, hints can be used to prompt players of their existence. Obviously other pieces of Nomai text can mention these smaller POIs, but the environment can also hint towards it using breadcrumbs that lead the player's eye towards the destination, such as the energy cables on Ember Twin, the lights used in Brittle Hollow, or even the spiral text itself acting as a way to guide players' eyes to larger settlements. The projection stones are also a great way of doing this, where you show the player a little bit of information, but it's unreachable. But they get curious because they're like, oh, what's that on the other side of this? Where is this? It gives narrative clues with the Nomai masks with a couple glowing, but also gives clues about where you should go and where you should try and explore. Flags can also be used. These are tall visual elements that can be seen above foliage or the horizon, such as plumes of smoke signifying a campfire from a fellow traveller, and the smoke raising from the dark bramble seed, to the beam of light coming from the distress signal beacons, or even like tall towers and trees to show the forest clearing with the quantum stone on Timber Hearth. These planets are littered with enough information to find that even if the player are just stumbling around, they will eventually find something of interest. But there's also never too much on the screen for the player to be overwhelmed. The planets themselves, when you land on them, are small enough that when you land on one side, obviously you can't see what's on the other, meaning that there's only one or two viewable POIs at any time, the rest being blocked by the horizon, and as you eventually explore across it, these things slowly come into view. This is an example of the triangular level design mentioned in Game Maker's Toolkit video on Breath of the Wild. Obviously this is a design principle made by Nintendo, and it is explained quite well. I would recommend going and watching this video because it is very interesting. I'm not going to say that this was an intentional design process by Mobius, but it is definitely something that is similar. But basically, you don't want to overwhelm the players with so much to explore that they don't know what to explore next. So you should only leave a couple big places of interest in view at a time. The signal scope is also an excellent way of getting players to explore. Initially, it's just used to find fellow Outer Wilds members on each of the planets, but later in the game you'll learn the frequencies of distress signals and the quantum frequencies. This makes it easier to find later game areas such as the Tower Quantum Knowledge in Giant's Deep or Escape Pod 3 in Dark Bramble. This gives players something simple and easy to understand initially with the Outer Wilds frequency, but then this is built upon for the later exploration. Again, another way Outer Wilds gives the player multiple hints and avenues to start their curiosity. Mentioning the Outer Wilds members, this is also a good place to start on each of the planets. Again, they are very easy to find because of the signal scope, you will go there initially, and each one has something interesting to say about the planet around them, and gives you prompts about what you should explore on the planet. As I mentioned before, the Scout Launcher is a great tool for curiosity, again, as you can launch it into these buildings that are not accessible, but you can also launch it into the distance to try and see if there's anything of interest to explore. This helps with the discovery process, as if there isn't anything instantly viewable in the surrounding area, you can always just launch the Scout Launcher over the horizon of the planet to see if there's something of interest to explore towards. Even though I said that Mobius didn't want to give tangible rewards for the player whilst they're exploring, I would say in itself that translating the Know My text is incredibly satisfying, which does help. The noise it makes and the other sparrows coming off of it just makes reading the text a lot more engaging than just, having the text appear there. And returning to the ship after a loop and going to the log is also very gratifying. Seeing how the exploration you just did led to all these new discoveries and how they all interlink is honestly a genius way of tracking information. It's so much easier to digest than just having a long list of info, and gives those who are more extrinsically motivated, like me for example, something to work towards. Like when I played the game, I know that when I was exploring with the intent of trying to complete the planets, which again wasn't really what Mobius wanted the game to be, but I still think it's a fine way to play the game initially, because you are playing to complete this logbook and get the satisfaction of not having the more to explore, little prompt, because then you've fully explored that specific area. But then as you explore and explore to finish this logbook, then you get curious about, what it's saying in the logbook and what it's hinting towards, and then you do eventually start exploring because you're curious. Overall, there are so many different things to be curious about in Outer Wilds, from the narrative of who these Nomai are, why did they come here, what was it they're trying to do, to questions about the sun going supernova, or to more of the mechanical aspects of the world around you. Each planet's unique environmental hazards, to how the teleporters work, or to the fundamentals of how quantum bodies function. And there is just so much to learn in Outer Wilds, and so many different plot lines and curiosities that all interlink into this perfect mystery of what is actually happening in the solar system and what's causing the time loop. And these things all have incredibly satisfying answers. I think that is a big reason why this game is hailed so much. Is yes, it does have incredibly interesting curiosities, but these also have really gratifying answers, and these answers really make you think about the real world around you. Beecham did describe it in the paper and in the talks about it being kind of designed like a murder mystery or a big mystery book, with all these different hints, eventually leading to the big answer. Anyway, so that is the end of the video. I feel like this game might have the best design exploration in any game I've ever played, and I hope I've given you all an insight into how Mobius Digital have done it. I know for me, looking into the design of this game has helped a lot with my personal game design, and inspired me to create something even a fraction as brilliant as this. If you did enjoy, please like and subscribe. Maybe check out some of the stuff I've made in terms of game design. Put my HDIO in the description. It's all very amateur prototypes. It's nothing too crazy, but if you want to have a look, have a look. And if you want to see more videos about game design, I'd be happy to do it. I was thinking maybe a Echoes of the Eye video, but I could also do design on other games. Yeah, I am a big Metroidvania person. I did make a Metroidvania video a couple of years ago, but I think my design ideas have probably progressed by then, so I wouldn't also redoing that video almost. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.